Hey guys, Jim Vanosky here with Manufacturing Talks. Today I am joined by Dan Malburg. He is a longtime practitioner in the field of nuclear. So we're going to talk all things nuclear. We're going to dispel some myths about nuclear, do a little education about why we need nuclear, how safe it is, how reliable it is. All those things Dan is here to help us understand. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion. He'll be with us in just a few seconds. So stay tuned here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vanosky, your host. I'm really excited today to be joined by Dan Malburg. He is a Senior Maintenance Instructor. He's with the nuclear industry. He's a consultant working here in Michigan right now. So welcome, Dan.
Well, hi, Jim. I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to advocate for what I think is a very important topic.
Well, and we're very glad to have you for that very reason. I personally think nuclear is an important part of our future, and obviously we'll talk about what's going on here in Michigan. Lots of exciting things. Before we do that, though, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got doing what you're doing today?
Well, like most, unless you happen to know someone in the nuclear field, it's a big mystery. It's big unknown.
Yeah.
Well, it was to me several years ago. I guess I'll give away my age. In 1974, I got out of school, and jobs were not plentiful. I thought I'd go to work maybe in the computer field, but I got a call from a contract firm that needed help at a nuclear plant I'd never heard of. I'd heard that we have nuclear plants in this country, and that was before 3 Mile Island or anything like that. So I went to work, my first job out of college, as an instrument technician, maintaining the controls and the instrumentation that actually let the operators know everything that's going on in the plant. And some of it, of course, is automated for safety reasons and systems. And that was the start of a career that I never expected. It really was just very fortuitous.
Yeah, and I love how you started that. You know, if you're not in it or closely affiliated with someone in the industry, it is kind of a black box to most people. So that's part of why we're here today. I want to kind of pull that curtain back a little bit. I mentioned, my own personal belief that nuclear is critical. You kind of implied that for yourself, but let's start off by just talking about that. Why is nuclear important to us?
Well, we have to have reliable and affordable power. It powers our lives. We really count on it. Everything from heating and lighting to manufacturing and entertainment. We rely on electricity. So nuclear is great because it's a base load that is there, very reliable, and also great as far as the amount of real estate it takes to make a lot of power. We talk about clean. It doesn't produce hydrocarbons. It's the big concern for many nowadays. And we can make about a gigawatt of electricity in about 3.5 square kilometers. Now, if we wanted to do that with solar, it would take 120, 150 square kilometers to come close to that. And wind, it would take 800 square kilometers or more. And the reliability, nuclear, the availability about 90% of the time is online making electricity. About 90% of any amount of time. And solar, well, the sun doesn't shine too much at night, and you can't shine a flashlight on it to make power, right? So,
Right.
You're lucky to get 20% of the time that you're making power. And with wind, depending on where in the country, you might be 30, 40%. There's some other things with infrastructure. You have to build the infrastructure to handle the maximum output. So you got to put a lot of copper in the air or in the ground in order to carry the maximum amount of power that you can get at some point in time. So of course, with nuclear, we aim to run at or near 100% of the power all the time. So we're utilizing the transmission, whereas solar and wind have to be basically overbuilt for the sunniest day, the windiest, and not too windy because they'll shut down in high wind conditions. So nuclear runs about 18 months to 2 years, depending on the particular plant type. In between refuelings, running 100% power or thereabouts. That's the goal. So it's much about the reliability. It's much about the availability, and it's a lot about the footprint too. And if you want to talk about what our landscape looks like with windmills, it's debatable, but to many of us, we see that as kind of an eyesore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just getting after some of those misconceptions, you mentioned the reliability piece, and I think a lot of people kind of miss the point. Yeah, there was all the headlines back from, you mentioned Three Mile Island. Those of us old enough to remember that, obviously, huge amount of negative publicity there. You had Fukushima, obviously, more
Chernobyl.
negative publicity.
Yeah.
Chernobyl. And so there's all these negatives, and people don't realize that in the meantime, we've had all these plants in the country churning away for decades at that 90+% reliability. And then the other misconception, and you covered it, is they think that wind and solar are doing something like that, and they're not anywhere close to that when it comes to reliability and availability. So that's, I think, a piece of what we have to get after with getting word out, which is why I was so excited to have you join us today to help us do that. Now, when we talk about Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island, obviously that heightened everyone's worries about the safety of nuclear. So let's touch on that a little bit, the safety aspect.
Okay, well, the U.S. nuclear industry is very regulated. We see that industry, no matter what it is, be it petrochemical, forestry, manufacturing, any of those industries, there is some risk involved.
Yep.
But most of them have not anywhere near the safety regulations that we have. And I must say, from my years in nuclear, that we've really grown as an industry and become more and more in tune with safety first. That's our number one focus. It has to be. It'll always be our number one focus in nuclear. Of course, we want to have good reliability and good availability, but that really only comes through safe operation of our plants.
Right.
So one of the things that came out of 3 Mile Island that really was a benefit to the nuclear industry, although at some point we thought, oh boy, here we go, regulations. We started sharing operating experience across the industry.
Yep.
A big part of our reliability has got to be our level of training and professionalism. And I would argue that we are second to none on training and professionalism in our business. We have to be.
Yeah.
It's our number one focus.
Yeah, that's extremely well said. And the fact that we bring up three things over, a 50-year time span, that those are the big splashes, and there's really nothing else to talk about when it comes to the negative end. I know another piece that people worry about is the nuclear waste. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that people have a valid concern. It's something that must be dealt with and dealt with safely. At present, we don't have a national site taking our waste, and our nuclear plants were burdened with spent fuel or used fuel in the pool. And now the technology is here to safely store it in various designs of take the fuel out of the pool, put it in a concrete cask for a temporary storage until some permanent solution can be set up.
Yeah.
So
And it's
this,
currently stored on site at the plants, correct?
yes, that's correct. And I feel that's not the best place for it, but
Right.
as a policy for our country and our energy future, we have to come up with something, and it can be safely done. There's no doubt in anyone's mind in the industry that this is something inherently unsafe. It's like anything else, you have to understand what you're dealing with and engineer a safe way to do it, and we have those.
So, of course, the big news here in Michigan is the Palisades plant. And for those who aren't familiar, that's a nuclear plant in Southwest Michigan that shut down, what now, 2 or 3 years ago?
In 2022.
Yep. Okay. So a couple of
Yeah,
years ago.
they made their last
Um,
power in April, April of 2022, I believe it was.
yep. That sounds accurate. And fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and we are in the process now of getting that back up and running. So, within the realm of what you can discuss, let's talk about why that's so important, and then some of the aspects of what we need to do to get that back online.
Well, it is important, and it's very doable. So some of the issues, and people have brought them up. Oh, what about all the safety upgrades and whatnot? These plants, and it's not just the one in Michigan, but others who are seeking to relicense, and now there are a couple others in the industry that are kind of drawing on our talent pool, us old guys.
Job
They,
security for you, huh?
yeah, well, job security I
Whether you
don't
like
need
it
at
or
some
not.
point. Yeah, right. Uh, we have challenges because basically we have to go through, or these plants have to go through a relicensing process. So
Yep.
it's not like, oh yeah, well, you had a license to drive, let's just do this written exam. No, the entire facility has to be reevaluated. So in a sense, it's much more economical than starting from scratch, but yet it's not. They're not giving these plants a pass and saying, "Oh yeah, start her back up. Buy some fuel and start it back
Right.
up." If there were any um, upgrades that were delayed or postponed or even waived during the time that they were going to shut down anyway, those things have to be reevaluated and reinstituted.
Yep.
And in fact, everything that ever happens in the nuclear industry is called operating experience. And if it leads to upgrades, and it often does, where we see how we can make an improvement in the systems, make them safer, make them more reliable. Those upgrades that Palisades or any of the others may have missed along the way because they were shut down and out of the loop, so to speak,
Yep.
they will be implemented.
Yep.
So it does end up being uh, a tough road because it's like not like restoring an old vehicle that was in bad shape, the old barn find or anything,
Yep.
because the nuclear plants inherently are kept in very good operating condition
Right.
because of the safety constraints and concerns. It is a little bit like restoring an old machine. However, if you think about, say, for instance, the old machines won't go as fast as a new one you'd make, but
Mhm.
that's not the point. Think of a fine timepiece that was built in the day. It was designed to keep time in a very accurate manner. Once restored, it'll do
Right.
the same thing.
Right.
We aren't going to increase, or they're not looking to increase the power or the speed or anything. The plants are going to do what they're designed to do and do them well at
Yep.
100% power if possible, whenever all systems are working properly.
Which is a great point. Yeah. So another kind of reinforcement to that safety aspect is you're not trying to, you know, bump up what this plant does. You're putting it back to where it's going to do what it was doing safely for all those decades. And it's close to $1 billion is what's going to be spent on this, right?
Yeah, I'm not the money person. I can't fathom those, and they're not giving me much.
You're not getting a
No,
percentage of that.
no big cut.
That's my understanding, is that
It
it's
is.
just a little shy of $1 billion.
In
And
com
obviously that's a combination of, to your point, if you think you're shutting something down, then you're not keeping up on the maintenance as you reach that point. So you got to go back and catch all of that up. You've got to upgrade systems to modern kind of
Right,
codes, right? And I'm sure
absolutely.
there's safety aspects where you're also upgrading systems as well.
There is. And that's just a matter of looking at everything that's happened in between, upgrading. I can look at my career path. I was hired after you don't hear about it much, but there was a fire at Browns Ferry plant,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
that caused quite a few upgrades in all of our nuclear industry. So that experience was we needed more robust protection systems and whatnot. And
Right.
that was a fire, and they said, well, gee, we have to have what they call train separation. We had to have two ways of shutting down, and they have to be very diverse so that one failure can't affect your total possibility of being able to safely shut down.
Yep.
So those things all had to be addressed. Anything new since then, believe me, Fukushima caused the entire nuclear industry a quite a bit of cost. But to build a new plant, I like to compare that to, let's say, boy, here's a nice river. Let's dam it and make some power here. Well, you know what? There's not too many places that we could just go up and flood a big area and say we're making
No.
a lake where you used to live.
No, well,
Yeah,
and in fact, out west, they're removing dams.
yeah. Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about um, so it was what, probably about 6 months ago is the work started toward getting Palisades back. Where do we stand now? And then what is that timeline? When do we expect that'll be powered
Well,
back up and operational?
they it's my understanding, and I'm not an insider on any of this. I know what the company has released, and I've listened and paid attention. But I know that there was some talk not too long after they shut down that there was some talk about, oh, maybe they'll restart. But I do know that they got busy and tried to get proactive about um, reestablishing the workforce and the training and whatnot. Closer, maybe closer to a year ago, but
Okay.
in force, I know there's a lot of people working at the site and working toward the maintenance upgrades and training, and the numbers are there. They've been working at it for at least all summer.
Yep. Yep. And what is the end date that they're shooting for? Do you
I
know
think
that?
I heard in the news that they want to have power generation sometime, um, maybe a year from now or a little over is what I'm hearing on the news. It would be a good thing.
Absolutely. Well, and let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, there's this big move to get away from fossil fuels, and here in Michigan, the legislature passed and the governor signed regulations that are essentially saying we're shutting down all our coal plants by
Yeah.
2035, right? Actually,
Yeah.
2033 now, and we're kind of making it tougher for gas plants as well. So the numbers I heard was 6 gigawatts of generating capacity that are gonna go away, period. And Palisades is 1 gig roughly.
Yeah, 850 meg,
Yep. And so,
little shy of a gig.
we're still way behind, but that becomes ever so much more critical if we're shutting the coal plants down.
Sure.
One aside that I'd heard, and I haven't heard an update lately, was the addition of the small modular reactors. Do you know anything as far as that goes?
From what I've heard, the company that's attempting to restart Palisades wants to go forward with the area, this site, to put in small modular reactors. So Don't know a whole lot about those. I'm an old large reactor person,
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
a dinosaur. But here's the deal. In order to have power distribution, you have to have the infrastructure. You
Right.
can't just say, well, let's put a small modular reactor out here in some area that's fairly remote. Oh,
Yep.
gee, it wouldn't be much of a problem. You have to have the infrastructure. Much like these gas turbine plants are built all along where there are big gas lines, but they also have
Right.
to have
Right.
power lines. So at Palisades, I know there's a substantial switch yard with lines that go various directions in the state. And I understand they have a contract with one of the utilities, I believe in northern Indiana, but we used to call them REA utilities
Yeah.
that they need power, they don't generate, but they distribute. So, yeah, at Palisades, they have a way to get the power away from the site to the customers, and that's
Yep.
one very important thing. Here's
Yeah.
the other
And
thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it actually is one of the Achilles heels of any of the um, fulfilling our need for all the extra power that we need for stuff like these data centers and AI is that regulations are hampering that exact thing, being able to get
Yeah,
those transmission lines put in
I
time.
worked for a very large utility that had a lot of 765,000 volt transmission. I believe
Yeah.
they at one point had more than all the other utilities in the country. But to get permits to put in a 765 kV line, not easy.
I
And
bet.
here's
Yeah.
another
Well,
little piece.
and then the
Uh,
sheer scale of the work too.
sure, right of ways and whatnot. But here's another little piece. All nuclear plants have to have the emergency response organizations in
Mhm.
place. Establishing the emergency response organization is another piece of the puzzle. Have to, in the case of a nuclear plant, work with the state, the local governments, and the counties, so that they have a plan in case of any kind of release or accident, and to put together an ERO, an emergency response organization, with the counties and the state would be another hurdle
Mm.
to finding another location. So, in that sense, I think any nuclear facility that's currently, set up, it just has a leg up on that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep. Now another thing I've heard about and read is that there are just a lot of um, regulations that are also kind of making it difficult and costly for this, I think, burgeoning uh, popularity of moving back in the direction of nuclear. Given your long experience, if there was one big policy change that you could make to facilitate getting more nuclear up and running, what would that be?
Well, one of the things, and we spoke about it briefly, would be to find a solution to, well, there are solutions, but a political agreement or solution to taking care of the spent fuel.
Yeah.
I think that would relieve a lot of people's concerns. Gee, we got all this really radioactive stuff sitting here in bunkers and whatnot. So that would be one. Another would be basically an education of the public. We talk about risk. Sure, there's risk with everything, but look at in the news, railroad derailments, evacuations from
Right.
chemical spills and fires, various other industries.
Yep.
They've all had them.
For sure. Yep.
So education of the public is really important, and I don't. It's one of the things that you say, well, if it's coming from the government, is it propaganda or is it, true? So people need to know more about nuclear power. They need to know more about the alternatives.
Yeah.
You can't make a good decision, be it political or scientific, without all the facts, and all the facts really aren't shared.
Right.
So
Yep.
policy wise, let's take care of the spent fuel issue, and let's educate the public, especially about things like the footprint and how are we going to allocate our resources, clean energy, those kinds of things can make a difference for the nuclear industry and for our country as a whole. Poland, I believe, just announced that they're going to build their first nuclear plant. Vietnam's building nuclear plants. China's building plenty. We're getting behind.
Yeah, which doesn't help with anything else. I mean, if we're going to electrify everything, not moving in the nuclear direction is definitely going to hamper us. That's for sure.
Yep.
But even if not, the fact that our power demand is growing today because of stuff like the data centers and just the incredible power consumption of AI-enabled compute equipment. People need to understand that as well.
Yeah, don't be scared of nuclear. Be scared of AI, right?
Right. Yeah, we got plenty of things to be scared of, right? Well, to wrap up, then you've got this gig going now. What do you think is down the road for you?
Oh, gee, I got grandkids to chase around, right? I worked a lot of years in nuclear and some not. I worked for the utilities as telecommunication engineer for some time. Enjoyed that, and I found my way back to nuclear, but been out here doing this for a long time, as you know, and for Dan, well, time to smell the roses a little bit. Got a lot of little projects that I haven't finished, and so that's, hopefully that's what's in it for me.
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I know they'll miss you in the nuclear field where we're going to have that need, but yeah, you've played your part and earned your next chapter, right?
That's right. And to those that would think about entering the nuclear field, when I came in, I thought, oh, this is complicated. And the people I knew, they said, "Whoa, nuclear plant, that seems really, really complicated." Well, there's nothing really complicated. It's a lot of simple things. They all work together well. It's complex, but not really complicated.
Yep. Well, and I think when you and I first talked, I mentioned that I had former Miss America Grace Stanke on a few months back. She's now in the nuclear field. She had just graduated with her nuclear engineering degree, and she's now working in the field and a huge proponent of that, both for, it being a really good way to make electricity, but also as a career option. So she's a great spokesperson out there to kind of come up behind you and continue to both make nuclear happen and tout it for everyone else.
Well, yes, too. And it is a good career field. There's, once you've gotten your feet in the water and learn enough about nuclear to be an asset, there are a lot of opportunities. So for young people, I watched that podcast you did with her.
Did you? Good.
With interest. I thought that was great when she said she was going to do it, because
so that was an easy one.
When her dad said there's no future in it, she said, "Oh, I'll try that." Prove them wrong. So I'm the old man. The kids are proven wrong now, but no, on some things, I think I'm right on nuclear.
I think you are too, and I think it's not just a great career right now. I think they're going to be expanding opportunities as we go forward.
I think so too. Yep.
Well, Dan, wonderful having you on. Thanks for helping dispel some of the myths out there and help in your little way to educate people. And we'll get this show out there and hopefully change some minds around nuclear as a good source of making the electricity we need.
Yes, and we do need it. I enjoy the creature comforts and the manufacturing that comes from a good, reliable, clean, and good power source. It's very important to us.
Yep. Great wrap up. Thanks again, and as always, thanks to those of you in the audience. You are why we're here. This one to me was both critical and extremely educational. I can't promise that every guest is going to be as educational or talk about things as critical as what Dan brought us today, but it's all going to be at least a little educational and critical. So we're here every Tuesday, sometimes also Thursdays. So tune in. We'll have more shows coming your way. Until then, this is Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talk signing off. So long.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.